Hello and welcome to the second channel for Tales from the Trip. I'm your host, the Trip Keeper, and on today's video, we're going to be reading a poly drug use trip report, psychotic episode, and withdrawals from butane, phenibut, and buprenorphine, excuse me. So this is definitely a wild combination, guys. It's sounds like pretty much insanity if you ask me. We're going to see what this is because the first couple words say at 18 years old. So never good to do these drugs when you're that young. It usually doesn't end well. Maybe one of them, besides the butane, I mean, that just can't go well to begin with. I thought I would just read this. It's a pretty long story. So, stay tuned for the ride. It's just not formatted correctly, which it's gonna make me mess up a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. It's a long story. I need a long story for the channel. I want to create longer videos for this channel and keep shorter ones for the main, and maybe do a long one every here and there. And if you guys are looking for my Instagram, by the way, it got deleted again, my second Instagram, so I don't have that Instagram anymore. I just have a personal account now, which I'm of course not going to give away, but I do have an Instagram, and yeah, it's kind of sad because I was more tame on there, I think, than I was on the main one that had 53,000 followers, mind you. And I still got knocked. So what I'm going to do, I'm just not going to make any more Instagrams. So yeah, at least not right now, because I just hate growing up, a base. Like I think I got up to 3,200 followers on there, and then losing it all. It's like, dude, what's the point anymore? So yeah, if you guys were looking about that, that's why I violated community standards again. So yeah, all right, let's get started with this thing. Let me make sure I'm recording. Okay. You never know. At 18 years old, living through life with ADHD alongside moderate anxiety, insomnia, clinical depression, and likely undiagnosed autism, aren't we all? I was already on prescribed regimen of 150 milligrams bupropion XR and 100 milligrams sertraline, trying to manage my mental health while supplementing with very excessive amounts of caffeine and nootropics like yohimbine. I don't know if that's pronounced right, yohimbine. I also don't know if I pronounced sertraline right either. I usually just called it cetraline, but yeah. Living in Poland, where laws around novel psychoactive substances and research chemicals are incredibly strict, my options were extremely limited. Most compounds commonly experimented with elsewhere, like 2-FEMC, 5-ETO-DIPT. I've actually never heard of either of those. I've heard of like 2-FA, 2CE, stuff like that. But I've never heard of 2-FEMC or 5E. I've heard of 5-MeO DIPT and stuff, but not 5-ETO. That's a strange one. I'll have to look that one up. Or even natural substances such as kratom or fly agaric mushrooms were outright illegal. With no dealer network and these restrictions, I found myself drawn to the only available legal substances, depressants targeting the GABA system. This was how my experimentation began, unknowingly stepping into a path that would lead me to 1,4-butanidol dependence. It's just butane. I'm not going to read that ever again. I'll just say butane. Counterintuitively, this story doesn't start with butane. It begins with phenibut. I've heard of phenibut before, mostly TFTT stories, warnings about its addictive potential and brutal withdrawal profile, but I assumed it was illegal in Poland like everything else, so I resumed my search. Hey, at least I told you that it's addictive and it can have brutal withdrawals, so hey, I told you guys, you can't blame that on me. I guess it was somehow... Surprisingly, it wasn't. I Googled and double-checked the law. To my disbelief, phenibut was somehow legal. I guess it was somehow left out during implementation of the July 29, 2005 Act on Counteracting Drug Addiction. A few days later, I bought 10 grams off of Allegro, our local version of Amazon, for $69.99. or about, I don't know what the Polish dollar is off the top of my head, so that, and then they said, or about $17, so I don't know what it's called. I don't feel like looking it up. At first, I used it casually, just once every 1 or 2 days, never redosing. I once even took enough to puke my guts out for half an hour, which should have scared me off, but the lack of any withdrawal symptoms or hangover afterward convinced me into a false sense of security. When I eventually ran out, I didn't even notice. No cravings, no come-downs, no anxiety. I went on living for months without thinking much of it. Looking back, that experience planted the idea that GABAergic substances were somehow safe for me, something I could control. My first encounters with butane were benign too, recreational and social. I had bought 40 milliliters long before the addiction ever began, using it sparingly at parties, with friends, or occasionally with my girlfriend. It was very manageable, controlled, just another cool substance to use when drinking alcohol and smoking weed became boring. One night, I was emotionally wrecked after a deeply hurtful conversation with my girlfriend. In that moment, I reached for whatever I had left, the last of the BDO, a beer, and a gram of pregabalin. It was a reckless cocktail, but I didn't care. I just wanted to numb everything. This showed me how well depressants mask any pain, pulling me so much closer to them. That spiral led me to needing space, so I told my girlfriend I needed a break. Around the same time, I was staying with my grandparents, working while the rest of my family was out of town for the winter holidays. I hadn't slept for 2 nights. My mind was tweaking. Sometimes I thought I've seen something move in the corner of my eye or heard something whispering. I tried digging in the medicine closet to maybe find something to relieve me. Then I found it, a nearly full box of 1 milligram lorazepam. Desperate for the rest, I dosed up and waited. 30 minutes, nothing. 60 minutes, nothing. So another pill went down my stomach, and then another. After this, my memory cuts off. Only singular dreamlike visions to get through the haze. Got through the haze, excuse me. During that blackout, I burnt my vape. Somehow ended with 50 Polish dollars, whatever the fuck. Don't. Okay, I'll look it up. Polish. I got a lot of people in Poland that watch my videos, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. I can't pronounce that. Zalodi or Lodi, something. I'm just going to say Polish Z. How about that? We'll say that. I burnt my vape, somehow ended up with 50 Polish Z I didn't have before. Drank some beers with strangers, talked to my friends on the phone for hours, asked the cashier for her number, and perhaps most painfully, I broke up with my girlfriend, which caused me to severely burn my wrists, with only a single memory staying with me, the stinging smell of my own burnt skin. I had apparently showed up at her place, in person, slurring my speech, promising I'm just a bit drunk. That blackout was a warning sign, bright screaming neon, but I wouldn't recognize it for what it was until much later. At the time, I chalked the stupid decision up to sleep deprivation. I didn't yet understand how slippery the slope had become. After that blackout, I wasn't the same. I was visibly shaken, emotionally drained, physically damaged. Scars on my hands and even deeper wounds on the inside. I've been through breakups before, but nothing came close to this pain. It wasn't just heartbreak. I still had to work. I've been through breakups before, but I read that one. I couldn't afford time to process, to break down, so I started using whatever I can get my hands on to get through the daily shifts. Some mornings I came in drunk, other times a methylphenidate, weed, pregabalin, tramadol, hydroxyzine, diphenhydramine, clemastine, promethazine, codeine, DXM, ephedrine, or even real drugs, whenever I was able to get them. Anything to hold myself together just long enough to make it through another day. But most importantly for this story, Phenibut returned. I ordered a 90-pack of 500 milligram capsules, convincing myself it would be fine. I handled it before, right? No withdrawals, no cravings. It was naive thinking. I hadn't used it long enough for the first time to see how bad it could really get. I thought I could dance along the edge again. I thought I was in control. At this point, I didn't care about my physical health. I wasn't looking for pleasure. I was chasing numbness, just trying to keep the pain away. Days blurred into one another, driven not by purpose, but by the next substance that might quiet the noise. Eventually, I lost my job. I had missed too many shifts without calling in. My manager, who had been more patient than she needed to be, told me she was treating my absence as a resignation. Just like that, I was out. And yet the substance use didn't end. If anything, it escalated. Without structure, without work, there was nothing to resist the spiral. About 2 weeks later, I went out drinking with friends. On the surface, it was a good night. I was social, animated, even the vomiting didn't faze me. But the next day broke the illusion. I woke up at 7 a.m. drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Something was wrong. I was jittery, wired, unable to fall back asleep. I knew something was definitely wrong, but I thought I was just hungover. Later that day, we had guests over for a family barbecue, but I could barely form a sentence. The exhaustion from the sleepless night made me feel like a husk. I excused myself early and went to bed, and lying there, staring at the ceiling, the realization finally clicked. This was it, the infamous withdrawals I'd heard about, the ones I thought I was immune to. I'd been warned, but of course, I didn't listen. The bottom begins to show you'd think the realization, this is withdrawal, might have stopped me. It didn't. I kept using Phenibut. Not because I didn't know the risks anymore, but because I didn't care. The emotional pain had dulled, but what replaced it wasn't relief. It was a kind of hollow apathy, a detachment from the concept of self-preservation while keeping withdrawals away. Maybe none of this matters. Maybe we're just a simulation, flickers of data firing off in a server somewhere. Pickles is using the litter box. Maybe there's no line between life and death at all, just transitions in brain chemistry and atom structure order. And so I kept going, but one night came the moment I couldn't hide anymore. I was to experience the kind of suffering that demands your attention, no matter how numb or dissociated you are. Your body knows even when your mind tries to get away. I was out drinking, again, going home drunk, again. That night, I lost my left headphone, again, an earring, but most notably, my Phenibut baggie. It was my only one, a freshly opened 20-gram pack of Phenibut. It was supposed to last me 5 or 6 days. Now it was gone. I had nothing left to buffer me from the crash and withdrawal. For the first time, I was going to feel everything I'd been running from, thanks to Phenibut's long half-life. I made it through the night, but by midday, reality hit hard. Anxiety crept in first, paralyzing and sharp. Then came the shakes, the insomnia, the stress that made my thoughts feel like they were screaming in a closed room. I tried numbing it with a few beers, just enough to calm the storm for a while. But I knew I couldn't keep this up. I was unemployed, broke, and alcohol was already on my long list of burnout substances. And then I remembered the package. A few days earlier, I had ordered another bottle of butane. I thought it was going to be for special occasions, just like before, sparing, social, harmless. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about moderation or consequences. I was thinking about relief. That bottle became a lifeline, a way out of the terrible withdrawals. Or at least that's what I thought. Looking back now, that wasn't a light of hope at the end of the tunnel. It was the headlight of an oncoming train. The bottle of butane did save me from a certain kind of pain. It silenced the withdrawal, numbed the emotional crash, gave me sleep, and quieted the storm in my chest. At first, it felt peaceful again, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Phenibut and butane both target GABA B receptors, but their differences run deep. Phenibut is subtle, almost clinical, functional, slow to act with a relatively long tail. It calms GHB in your body, and GHB isn't subtle, where Phenibut gently helps with anxiety. Butane crashes through neurochemistry with calm and euphoria. It influences GHB receptors, dopamine, serotonin, and both GABA A and GABA B. It's sedating, euphoric, and strong. Too strong, too easy, too effective, and too short-acting. So yes, I found a remedy for my Phenibut withdrawal, but I didn't just replace a habit. I leveled up to something far more dangerous and harder to manage, and by the time I noticed the difference, I was already too deep to turn around. I knew I was getting deeper. I knew butane was stronger, riskier, more addictive, but I didn't care. I didn't care if I died. I didn't fear it. There was no threat in death, just absence, an incomprehensible lack of thoughts. No police, no crying, no consequence, just a void. And so I did. From day one, I used butane daily, not just a little, sometimes socially, but mostly not. I dosed on a schedule. Sometimes I treated myself with a few extra milliliters, but mostly it was maintenance. Avoiding the shakes, the fear, and the pain, which I quickly found out were so much worse than Phenibut. People talk about psychological addiction, cravings, rituals, emotional need. But for me, it didn't feel like that. I wasn't obsessed. I didn't plan my day around pleasure. I just didn't want to feel bad. And honestly, I stayed functional. I wasn't slurring conversations or passing out in public. I wasn't robbing stores or crashing cars. I was a high-functioning addict. On the surface, I kept it together, at least for now. It took a while to adjust to the butane. The effects were heavier, stranger, and less predictable than Phenibut, but it worked. At that point, that was all that mattered. I settled into a rhythm. I lived what looked like a normal life. School, housework, friends. I poured a glass of juice or soda, stirred in 1.5 milligrams of butane, and slipped it very slowly every 4 to 6 hours. The taste was bittersweet, not enough to gag, but enough to remind me I was drinking something not made for humans. Something 95% pure. Taking it pure felt like motor oil. Thick, greasy, throat-coating bitterness with a small hint of sweetness, but diluted. It was part of the day, and it worked, almost too well. I wasn't just functional, at least for me. I was better. More social, more relaxed. I chatted with family for no reason, struck up conversations with strangers on the bus. I asked girls for their Instagram. I ate a lot. For context, I'm 60 kilograms at 178 centimeters. No one suspected a thing. On the outside, I looked fine, maybe even thriving. But inside, a tolerance was building and a clock was ticking. 2 weeks in, my dose quietly crept up to 2 milliliters every 3 hours. That might not sound like much, but with something as potent and short-acting as butane, it rewrote my day. I couldn't leave home without it. I carried a bottle, sometimes mixed, sometimes concentrated, with at least 1 or 2 doses on hand. Not having it made me anxious, not craving the high, but fearing absence and withdrawals. What if it rained? What if my bus broke down? What if I started withdrawing? My life wasn't about getting high. It was about not crashing. And then the nights came. Before butane, I slept 7 to 8 hours straight. Now I had a dose every 5 hours. I'd wake up at 6, dose, eat, then maybe nap an hour or 2 more and dose again. I wasn't mad, just mildly annoyed. At least it wasn't the dreadful withdrawal. At this point, butane wasn't a danger. It was a chore, a maintenance task like brushing teeth or charging my phone, except missing it brought sweats, shakes, anxiety, and imaginary shadows. Around week 3, a thought broke through. Maybe I should try tapering. That's what I should do, right? It probably won't be that hard. Surprisingly, I did try. I was up to 2.5 milliliters every 3 hours, but restructured to 2 milliliters every 2 hours, then 1.75 milliliters. It felt like progress, I guess. For 5 days, I stuck with it. It wasn't a real taper, more a routine shift. But it helped. The worst withdrawal stayed at bay, and I wasn't completely miserable. A sliver of hope remained, but I didn't make it. Not because I needed the drug, not because cravings were unbearable. I just didn't care. Hidden in addiction, no one knew. No support, no accountability. Inside, no fun, no euphoria, no purpose, no joy. Only nothing. When you feel dead inside, what's the point of quitting? I stopped tapering, no binge, no overdose. A quiet return to the routine. Doing nothing was easier than trying. Okay, so we're a little bit more than halfway through. We got 2 more big paragraphs left. And yeah, so the first mistake, okay, was buying the Phenibut and buying the butane. But the second mistake was assuming you'd be okay if you took Phenibut again. And then the third mistake, which is the biggest problem right now, is losing the Phenibut and taking butane instead of the Phenibut to calm your withdrawals. What you got to do, if you're addicted to Phenibut, you have to skip a day. You can't just take it every single day. You're just going to have to. There's no easy way of getting out of it. That is the best way, because people who get withdrawals take it every fucking day. And soon enough, you're going to be taking it every day, and you're still going to go through them. So if you skip a day or two, do that, take a lower dose the next time, because Phenibut's strong at a low dose, dude. So, for me personally, I would take high doses and then I would take low doses. I'd still feel, the same way pretty much. Maybe not as much, but it was still a lot. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's see where this story goes. The patch eventually. My dose had risen again to over 3 milliliters every 2 to 3 hours. I wasn't hiding from myself anymore. I knew what I did. I was squeezing fun from it before the end inevitably came. And yet, I still looked fine. No vomiting, no slurring when I interacted. My secret remained secret. The worst part, the spiral cost me under 300 Polish Z's. About $80. 2 bottles, 140 Polish Z's. Each lasted me all this time, and I didn't even run out. Butane is cheap, too functional for me, and masks damage. The low price was a trap. Functioning removed addiction's friction. No job loss, no overdrafts, no consequences. Just slow erasure of everything. So I added more substances, nootropics, sedatives, legal hallucinogens, deliriants, anything I could order and afford. Then the patch came. A friend mentioned her mom had leftover morphine patches left by her grandmother. My drug-wired brain lit up. A few days later, I traded 10 milliliters of vape juice for just 1 patch. A steal, right? Wrong. At home, I opened the envelope. Buprenorphine 20 milligrams. Did I care? Of course not. If you guys don't know, buprenorphine is not morphine. Safety, caution, and substance interactions weren't in my monologue. I thought, sure, maybe it'll help me sleep so I can lay through withdrawals and quit my habit. I cut a quarter and tucked it between my cheek. Slight buzz, but no sleep. Just weird withdrawal simulation. Dizziness, warmness, and racing heart. Now, the thing with Suboxone, you can experience this thing called precipitated withdrawal, which is way worse than regular withdrawal. And that's why, I don't know if that's the best thing to do when getting off of opioids, but yeah. All right, where am I at now? See, I lost my spot. All right, slight buzz, but no sleep. Just weird withdrawal simulation, dizziness, warmness, and racing heart. The lack of butane was somehow overpowering an opioid. So I took another quarter, now at 10 milligrams total. Bacal. Then I lay down and waited. When sedation never came, I sat on the porch. There was no chance to sleep. The withdrawal was there, dulled by the buprenorphine, but I felt it. I wasn't about to combine opioids and depressants, so I waited. The night air was sharp. All I felt was withdrawals, creeping edge, hands shaking, chest tight, thoughts cycling. Around 2 to 3 a.m., shakes and dread morphed into paralytic anxiety. I gave in. I thought, just a little butane to smooth things over, not nearly enough for respiratory depression. But the bottle had frozen oily crystals lining it due to butane freezing, around 20 degrees Celsius. Why didn't I foresee this? I scraped a couple shards into a cup, warmed it in my hands, and swallowed without measuring. That was the final mistake. Moments later, my paranoid brain concluded, "You took too much. You're overdosing. You're going to stop breathing." I tried to vomit. Nothing. I shoved salt in my mouth, hoping for a gag reflex. Still nothing. 10 minutes passed. I thought I had lost feeling in my hands. Breath seemingly thin and shallow. Lips looked bluish in the porch light. At least that's what they looked like in my fried head. I broke. I ran inside, woke my parents in panic. "I did something stupid. I'm sorry. Can you call 112 for me?" When paramedics arrived, butane's peak hit. My breathing slowed. Mine settled. I didn't want to go, but they took me anyway. And so, the night that melted my mind has begun. If you know something about synthetic opioids, you see where this is going. Buprenorphine isn't just weaker morphine. It's way more complicated than that. It's a partial mu-opioid agonist, but also a kappa opioid receptor antagonist. And so salvinorin A, the psychoactive ingredient in Salvia divinorum, the kappa receptor mediates dissociation, depersonalization, looping thoughts, glitchy hallucinations, disrupt it, and your brain fires REM dream circuits while awake. Buprenorphine alone is safe. It's a life-saving drug worldwide, keeping so many people sober and out of pain. But my case was a feral storm. Beginning a butane withdrawal, CNS unstable after weeks of cycling stimulation and sedation, sleep deprivation for days, and chemically induced hypnagogic states. The high buprenorphine dose in a chemically chaotic state. It wasn't just buprenorphine, it was buprenorphine after butane, on top of the exhaustion, stimulant rebound, collapsing neurotransmitters. That combination cracked something loose. I sat in the ambulance, uncomfortably warm, head buzzing, breathing fast. When I heard someone whisper my name, I turned. No one. Another whisper, a poke on my face, someone laughing besides me, invisible. The paramedic opened the back door. "How are you feeling now?" I smiled, looking dead serious, and said, "I'm fine, but my friend won't stop poking me. Can you tell him to stop?" Her face turned weird. She spoke with someone beside her and closed the door. I glared at empty air, waving away whatever was annoying me so much. My CNS glitching, REM circuits firing, hallucinations of voices, touches, phantom limbs, shadow figures. It felt like my brain tried to wake itself. That was the start of the psychotic break. All right, we got one more paragraph here, guys. It's like I said, they're long ones, so be patient. I really don't have much to say for this one. I'll say stuff, something at the end, but I kind of wanted to just get through this one since it's so long. I didn't want to keep on butting and never get done. So, yeah. The beginning of the end. They moved me to a hospital bed. Cold sheets, lights too bright, and fluorescent bulbs buzzing loudly in my ear. The air felt sterile and wrong, stinging me in the nose. The thin plastic curtains made everything worse. Reality blurred, voices echoed, motions repeated, geometry folded like a funhouse. I couldn't keep count of the amount of walls surrounding me. People walked by who weren't there. Nurses talking to invisible patients. A shadow figure sitting, watching at my bed's foot. Closing my eyes felt like dropping through a trap door. I was asleep for what felt like hours. Then boom, I was back up. 5 seconds after I fell asleep, wakes became dreams and back, inside-out faces whispering, hallways with no floor, my voice arguing with itself across the room, heart pounding, lungs tight. I stared at what looked kind of like a hospital but felt like a nightmare. Next, I sat upright, 2 friends beside me, cutouts of themselves, flat and flickering, sipping bright neon drinks, popping mystery pills they supposedly got from a medicine cabinet they broke into. "What the hell are you doing here? You shouldn't be here," they said. They were transcending their forms. Or, maybe he said that, but they said they were transcending their forms, overdosing on fentanyl, tramadol, ketamine, and so many different things I can't recall, to talk telepathically. I tried not to watch them slowly fade and disintegrate. I focused on the wall, but shelves turned into Tetris blocks, pulsating quickly with my heartbeat. Moving around and disappearing after forming a full line. A real voice snapped through, a doctor calling me for a drug test. She gave me a plastic cup and pointed me to the bathroom. I managed to walk a few steps and make a turn. Then everything vanished. White maze, endless, sterile echoes. I somehow found the bathroom. At least it seemed to be one. I entered it forgetting what I was doing in the first place, so I left. But the hallway was gone, replaced by yawning darkness. I dropped the sample cup. It disappeared into the ground. A deep voice said, "What are you doing? Look at you," making me question every decision I have ever made. Then the voice pulled me. I fell through the door and hall until I landed back in bed. I'm guessing someone has seen me lost, blank-eyed, and alerted a nurse for me or walls folded around me. Both equally possible. Either way, I returned to bed and continued to dissociate into the madness that the hospital has become. Curtains warped further, walls folded in DNA-like twists, forming intricate shapes with unimaginable colors. My friends next to me, alive but not, mouths agape, eyes wide, pupils dilated, frozen in grotesque ecstasy. A disturbing pleasure. Behind one of the curtains stood a hunched figure, like a stripped-down Ryuk from Death Note, but no face or hair, just decay looking over, enjoying the show. The image burned into my mind, then everything unraveled. I collapsed into my mind's wreckage, falling asleep again. When I first regained consciousness, a man stood before me, hands covered in blood. He seemed to be Jesus Christ manifesting himself to me, causing me to pray aloud, despite my atheism. They removed Jesus, who later turned out to be an alcoholic patient in psychosis who'd ripped his IVs out and proceeded to give me IV fluids and 3 milligrams lorazepam, which, as you might remember, was my mortal enemy. My paranoid mind finally eased a little, visions dulled to mildly disturbing intrigue. After hours and another 0.5 milligram lorazepam, I fell asleep. I woke up around 7 a.m. to a doctor standing next to me. The mind-crushing storm had lorazepam. I fell asleep. Mind-crushing see, that's why with these long, things, I can't read them correctly because it keeps going in the same line. The mind-crushing storm had faded. I felt moderately fine. He prescribed 75 milligrams trazodone for post-sobriety insomnia, added fluids, then discharged me under a condition that I won't use any psychoactive substances. My poor parents were at work, despite the stress and sleepless night, so I got home alone, intoxicated and exhausted, but alive. I tried to sleep, but woke up instantly, drenched in sweat, hearing voices I had taken butane again. Terrified, I checked my pupils and cried in the mirror. That day, I burned the remaining butane and gave any other leftover substances to a close friend of mine. My mental and physical state recovered slowly. The disturbing dreams were lingering buprenorphine effects. I overhauled sleep hygiene and stayed sober for over 2 weeks until 4 sips of beer with friends. Withdrawals were scary, shadow faces peeking from corners, whispers from invisible people. The hallucinations were even more noticeable in the dark. I ended up not having kidney damage, and my purely physical dependence theory held true. I still don't think substances like Phenibut or butane are inherently bad, and I will likely resume using them occasionally. I was definitely reminded of the deathly grip GABA depressants can have. However, as you've seen in this story, I'm not one to remember such warnings for long. All right, so I'm glad he got sober, okay, but that's not a good ending to end on. He's going to go back to him. I know it. Because if you're not saying it's inherently bad after what just happened to you, like, yes, maybe not inherently bad to everybody, but to you, they are inherently bad. So if you're listening to this story right now, please do not take that shit ever again. But yeah, tell me what you guys think about the story. Put it in the comment section below. And I've been busy. I've been working. And yeah, this world is fucked. This country is fucked, actually. So yeah, it's been bad. It's been bad, but I've been still in a good mood. So hey, we'll take it. Love you guys. Peace.